Good evening. I am Richard S. McGee, and you are watching The Learning Tree. Tonight we're doing a very special show. We're doing the story of Leslie Holmes, songstress, singer, vocalist extraordinary, Leslie Holmes. I have with me 5 people who have come to I guess you could say honor her and to appraise what she's done in the past and tell her story. And we're going to take as much time as necessary to get that story told. So we're going to begin this. I'm not going to introduce you to each of these individuals up front, but I shall after we hear from Leslie. Leslie Holmes is a resident of Wellesley, Massachusetts, graduate of Wellesley College, has conducted many concerts and with large symphony orchestras, and has done a large number of recitals in Cuba. How about that? And she's going to tell us a little bit about Leslie Holmes and her life. Begin with, where did you start out in life?
Well, I was, born at a very young age in Nutley, New Jersey.
Okay.
Which is the town from which Martha Stewart comes.
Okay, I've heard that name.
Yes. And I always sang. My mother said that when I was 3 years old and we would have Sunday school choral concerts, I would elbow my way to the front and sing loudly. But I had this thing somehow inside me that I wanted to give, that I wanted to share. And at least in those days, it was less about me than doing it. And so I sang all through grade school, high school. I played the piano.
Okay.
I was the school accompanist, and so I would play the piano and then jump up on the stage and sing a solo,
Okay.
which was really fun. And played a lot of sports.
Okay. Sports. What sport did you play?
Well, we had town teams.
Where did you go to high school again? In Jersey?
Nutley High School.
In Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nothing. Well, what were the sports?
We had town teams, and I played basketball, softball, and field hockey.
Which one was your favorite sport?
Probably softball.
Softball. Okay. All right. How large was your family?
4 children,
Okay.
2 boys,
All right.
2 girls,
Okay.
all 2 years apart,
Okay.
all played musical instruments.
Okay. You had your own orchestra.
That's right. And my mother played the piano.
Okay.
My father sang.
Okay.
And my mother's mother had a contract with the Metropolitan Opera to do roles, but then she got married. And in those
Are
days...
you trying to tell me that marriage ruined her career?
Yeah, right.
Is that
Well,
what you're
in
saying?
those
Is that what
days-
you're saying to me?
whither thou goest. So she went to Southern Illinois
Okay.
and gave her music there.
Okay.
So that cut off her career, although she did a lot of singing there. And after high school, I went to Wellesley College. I wasn't even going to apply to Wellesley because my mother and her 2 sisters went to Wellesley. And I thought, I don't want to go to Wellesley. I want my own
You didn't want to be a
school.
follow-on.
But then I saw it,
Okay.
and I said, I think I do want to go here.
Okay.
So I had a wonderful time in college. It wasn't a music school, as you know, but I majored in music
Okay.
and did a lot of singing. I was the leader of one of the octets and we went all over the place singing. It was a busy time. And after college, I went to New York and worked at Town Hall as the assistant concert manager. And I studied with a very well-known teacher, and I practiced on the stage at Town Hall. And then got married. I met my husband, Lou, on Cape Cod, and he and one of his college roommates, who were both from the South and had come up to the Cape to see what it was like to come up north.
Up from the
So they came up north,
Okay.
and the three of us went all over together. I had gone to the Cape to work with my boyfriend, who worked at the same hotel. But we
Lou
met,
stalled him.
we met over the toaster, and it's been toasting ever since.
How long has that been now?
57 years.
Oh.
We were only 8 when we got married.
I knew that. You
Yeah.
didn't have to tell me.
Yes,
I knew that.
yes, yes.
What does
So
Lou do these days?
he is a physician.
All right.
He works at Mass General in genetics,
Okay. All right.
and he's still working.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
You mean he could tell me something about my history? Genetically?
Oh, probably.
Okay. We'll have to talk to him about that.
Yes.
All right. But
Yes.
continue.
He works particularly in birth defects and in birth defects caused by drugs, like a drug to clear up acne, that kind of thing, that a pregnant woman might take, and what effect it has on the fetus.
So how'd you get him to come from the Cape to come live in Wellesley?
He went to Duke Medical School. We went to Duke Medical School because we had no money,
Okay.
and I taught piano, I taught voice, I was the soloist with the Duke Chapel Choir. I sang with the Durham, North Carolina Savoyards, Gilbert and Sullivan, and I sang with the Durham Choral Society, and I had a great time down there.
Okay.
I was the only Northerner I knew, but they didn't, most of them didn't seem to hold that against me.
Okay, that's good.
And so after he finished medical school, he looked for an internship program, and he liked the one at Mass General best. So we came up here, and then in those days, you had to serve in the military in some way. So he chose the Public Health Service, and we went to Staten Island.
Wait a minute, you said military.
Yeah, the public
public
health is part of the military.
Is that right? I didn't know that. That's interesting. All right.
And he says he defended Staten Island against the Vietnamese.
Okay.
Maybe we could use him right now.
Yeah, right.
All right.
But I did a lot of singing in New York
Mm-hmm.
then,
All right.
and he went to Staten Island. He's always been particularly nice to me. There's one nice one in every couple. It's he. But he went to Staten Island so that I would be able to sing in New York, which I did.
Good. Very
And
good.
then we came back up here and looked for a house, not looking in Wellesley because we didn't think we could afford Wellesley.
Okay.
However, we found an antique house, which next year will be 220 years old.
Are we talking about the house you currently live in?
Yes,
That house is going to be 220
Yes.
years old? My goodness. Okay, almost my age.
and we have lived there. It's our first house, our last house. We're planning to stay there till our toes turn up. And
What's this feedback we're getting? Go ahead.
so we're planning to stay there. Next year it will be 50 years.
My goodness gracious. You have a family.
I do.
Just tell me a little about your family.
Well, here's the whole family.
All right.
7 grandchildren, 3 sons, 3 mothers of the grandchildren,
Okay.
and us. And here,
What are their names, your sons and your offspring?
I don't remember.
Well, this will refresh your memory.
Work on it.
Our sons, I think, are Louis, Will, and Robbie.
Okay.
And the mothers of our grandchildren are Brina, Lisa, and Joy.
So what are your 3 sons doing these days?
The oldest one is a physician in Middlebury,
Okay.
Vermont.
All right.
The middle one and his wife teach at a private school in Southern California.
Okay.
And in the summer, he comes east and is the manager of an Appalachian Mountain Club Island on Lake Winnipesaukee. And
Sounds
he's
like
done
fun.
that for 10 years. The youngest one is a filmmaker and a storyteller. And he goes around the world documenting sustainable living practices, sustainable travel, interesting stories about people.
Okay.
So here are the 3 of them with Lou and me.
All right.
And then there's a picture here of the grandchildren.
What are their names?
Their names, well, boy, you're really taxing me.
Yeah, for having so many.
Sam, Nick, Jane, Scott, Maddie, June, and Graham.
Oh, they will love you for that.
Yeah.
They'll love you for that. And those 2 people in the middle, who are those 2 people?
I don't know.
We'll figure that out soon later. Yeah. Okay.
I wonder who that is.
Yeah.
But that was this year's holiday picture.
All right. Now, this has obviously something to do with your career, right?
The next
Right.
one. Yeah.
This is I singing at the Wellesley Symphony Holiday Pops this year.
This year.
Well,
You ran ahead of me there. We were talking about your history. You brought me current. Oh, go ahead.
Every year, our music director, Max Hobart, who is hovering around, has me sing I'll Be Home for Christmas. And so I
Okay.
was singing that in this picture. So I won't show any more.
No.
You got one other
All
one
right.
here you sing.
Yeah, I know.
You don't want to use
Okay.
that?
You don't want to show anymore?
What?
You have some more there. You want to talk about them?
Well, this
What is this one?
This is playing tennis, which was very, very important to me. And this friend, Jill Linden, is here today. And we played tennis all the time. And this is actually, is this up at 3 Mile?
Yes.
This is playing at the Appalachian Mountain Club Island,
Oh,
where my son is the manager.
all right. Very good. Now, don't get them out of
Make you
order
pay
now.
to
We
play
have-
there?
Remember.
Okay, and the last one is BACA, is the Boston Association of Cabaret Artists. And for some reason, even though I'm not very smart, they have me as chair of the advisory board. So I guess they didn't know what to do with me, so
Oh,
they
okay.
put me
all
there.
right.
But this is singing at their 20th, the 20th anniversary
All
of,
right.
it's called BACA.
Baca, okay. All right.
So
Well,
that's-
you just reminded me, I forgot to mention that you are the president of the Wellesley Symphony Orchestra.
Somehow.
Yes, so, I mean, you've moved ahead. Okay. You
Well,
moved
we
from
can always
one
back
small
up.
spot to a big spot.
We can always back up.
Okay, you want to tell us any more about your life and history and stories? Some of the symphonies you performed with?
Well, I've been very fortunate. I was soloist with the Boston Symphony and with the Boston Pops 3 times. Once in college, the octet I directed sang with the Boston Pops, and then I sang with them 2 other times. I've done a bunch of Gardner Museum recitals. I did a lot of singing with the Opera Company of Boston and Sarah Caldwell, and went throughout New England doing opera previews for her. Before the touring group would come, I would play the piano and sing, and I was supposed to have all 5th graders, and I had everyone from a gym full of kindergartners to a gorgeous house full of adult fundraisers. So you had to kind of adapt what you were going to do. But I've really had a wonderful time.
Now, what are you doing these days?
I'm teaching
Where are you teaching?
at home.
At home?
I've
Okay.
always done that.
Okay.
I've been asked to teach at a few institutions, like the jail. No. But I decided not to because you teach at an institution and you have meetings all the time. You have to keep a total regular schedule. You have to make up lessons if you miss them. It's, I just preferred to teach privately.
Yeah.
And it's been the right thing to do. I host a cabaret open mic at Amazing Things Art
You also have a
Center.
radio show, don't you?
I had a radio show.
You gave up your radio show.
Well, they gave me up
Okay.
because this was WCRB, Boston's 24-hour classical station, but they stopped.
them,
They
yes.
stopped playing vocal music
Oh. Why is that?
because people often listen to the radio, especially classical music, in their offices as kind of wallpaper. And you can't listen to vocal music without really listening to it. And so they stopped broadcasting the M.I.T. They sent me throughout the country trying to get sponsorship for, actually for the BSO broadcasts. But vocal music, you don't hear it on
Well, I was going to do the introduction of 5 people who've come to refute everything you've said.
I knew it before.
But I think that I'll let you do that. Would you be kind and generous enough? Don't start with her. Start over here with Bill. Tell me,
backwards.
tell
We
me
don't
who
know
this
each other.
is. Tell me how you know
I
him.
just came. They picked me up on the street.
Right, he was walking by and
I
we
was
said,
walking by and they said,
"Gosh,
"You
I
look
like your
nice."
tie."
And you're nicely dressed, so you come in.
Yeah, okay, so start with him.
So Bill Merrill is an amazing pianist and an amazing vocal coach. Now, the difference between a voice teacher and a vocal coach is that a vocal coach will say, you know, that doesn't sound quite right. And then it's up to you to figure out why. Whereas a vocal teacher tries to tell you why, sometimes accurately and
How many
sometimes
times do
not.
we have to do do, re, mi?
And the vocal coach also usually plays the piano for the singer.
Okay,
Whereas
we're going to let you talk later.
Okay.
You're not on
Okay,
stage.
I'm
You're
jumping
not on
ahead.
stage yet.
Okay.
So you work on repertoire,
Yeah.
and we've been working probably 35 years.
Wow.
Close to it. Yeah. Since
Excuse
the
me.
French and Indian Wars, somewhere back then.
So he
All right,
has.
before he gets started,
Next.
talk
Next
to Jill.
is Jill Linden,
Jill.
my very best friend, who's been my best friend for 45 years. We were only 3 when we started
was
being
2.
best friends.
That's the age of a good Scot.
As you can see, she's very supportive. And Lori Anderson York is a longtime student, beautiful singer, beautiful person.
Thank you.
And Max Hobart, I have no idea who he is. Actually, he is the music director, conductor of the Wellesley Symphony, and played with the BSO for 27 years, and is the Wellesley Symphony. The players come from 42 different towns just to play Under the Sky.
I didn't know you had that many people on stage. 42?
65.
How many?
65 on stage, but from 42 different communities.
My goodness.
And next to
You mean
me
Wellesley hadn't have enough people?
And next
recruit
to me-
outside the territory?
is Barbara Ireland,
Smith Ireland.
Barbara Smith Ireland, whom I have known since we went to kindergarten together
True. Very
and
true.
lived up down the street from each other. So, and I used to date her two-timing brother.
Yeah, I was 2 times. Not even that much trouble.
So that's the cast of
That's,
characters.
these are the people now. Now, we've come to honor Leslie Holmes. And I don't want you to think that you have the same time slot as she had. But I want to hear a little bit about you, starting with you, Barbara.
Oh, okay. Well,
Uh-oh.
I grew up in Nutley, as Leslie did, but we lived on kind of a different area of Nutley at first, till I was 5. And then when we went to kindergarten, that's where I met Leslie. She has a picture, but she didn't bring it, so, and I don't have it, so whatever. But anyway, then we moved to another
She
area.
was a lot younger then.
I am a lot younger than you. I'm from February
you
to
were a
November
lot-
younger than you.
You were a lot younger in kindergarten.
Well, than I am now?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think so. You think so?
Okay.
But it turned out that my parents bought a house just down the street from Leslie and her family. And actually, it was in between where my grandparents lived and where we lived, Leslie and her family lived. So we went through kindergarten and then junior high school and then high school all together. I played in the same sports. We all played. We had a team called Up and Adams. And we played basketball and baseball, and I don't remember hockey. I didn't play that.
I don't want you
Soccer?
to talk about you. I don't want you to talk about your relationship. We're going to come back to that.
Oh, all right, come back to
I want to
Leslie.
talk
Okay.
about you.
Well, we always knew that Leslie was in music, and to us as little kids, that was a little odd. She was a little odd. But Leslie and I were always friends. But I do remember one day I was walking down the street with one of our other girlfriends, who was a girlfriend of my older brother. I only had one brother. He was 2.5 years older than I. And I will never forget this. We almost got to Leslie's house, and my brother drives up and parks in front of Leslie's, gets out of the car, he doesn't see us, and goes in the house. Well, the girl that was with me, who thought she was his boyfriend, was hysterical.
Barbara, tell me, how long have you lived in Wellesley?
I don't live in Wellesley.
Where
I'm
do you
sorry,
live?
you want me to hear about me. I live in Hingham, South Shore.
You live in Hingham.
Right.
All right.
And
So
I
what's your history in Hingham?
well, my history is my grandparents lived in Hingham, my grandparents lived in Nutley. My mother grew up there.
Okay.
My father grew up in Brooklyn, New York,
Okay.
and when they were married, they moved to Nutley. So I never got away with anything because everybody knew me. I was Mr. and Mrs. Lewis's granddaughter, or Mr. and Mrs. Smith's daughter, or Sandy Smith's sister. So, because I was the younger one. But so I grew up in Nutley, and then I married a man, boy at that time, from Nutley. He went to Nutley High School with us. Leslie knew him, and I was married. We were married. He was 3 years ahead of me in high school, but we got married. Leslie was in our wedding, then I was in her she and Lou's wedding, and we had this clique as kids do, in high school in particular, and. It was up and down, but with everybody. But it was a great town to live in. It was only 14,000 people. Now it's, gosh, what?
You have siblings?
I had a brother. He's passed away.
Do you have children?
I do. I have a daughter who lives in Cohasset, not very far from me. She is in software technology. and I have a son who lives in California with my only 3 grandchildren. They have a boy, 21, another boy, 18, and a little girl, 13. The loves of my life. And unfortunately, my husband just passed away in June. Leslie, God love her, came down to the funeral, which wasn't an easy task for her. She was,
It was my second of the day, yes.
Yeah, it was her second funeral of the day. So it was wonderful to see her there. And so my husband and I were married 59 years. And we went from Nutley. My husband was in the golf business. And he worked for first the McGregor Golf Company and then FootJoy, then what became Titleist FootJoy, which is kind of in our family because my son works for Under Armour and my grandson is on a golf scholarship at UCLA. So kind of goes in the family here. But we moved from Nutley to Ohio, to Cincinnati, Ohio. My husband got a job transfer, a promotion, and we had to go to Cincinnati. And I said, "Where are we going? I don't know where that is. Give me a map." And from there, we moved to Hingham in 1966. Or 1974, excuse me. We moved from New Jersey to Ohio in 66. And we moved back, we came to Massachusetts in 1974 when he went to work for the FootJoy Golf Shoe Company. And then we did a lot of traveling. I would say the last 10 to 15 years he traveled with the PGA Tour. He was in charge of that and all of that. We went, and I traveled with him. It was fabulous. We had a great time.
All right.
So that was really fun. And then he retired in 98. We moved to Florida.
All right.
And then while there, he got very sick.
All right.
And
I'll be back to you. Max?
Okay, going too long.
Max Hobart, a little bit about who you are, where you came from.
Well, I am the music director and conductor of the Wellesley Symphony, and I met Leslie shortly after I...
Now, I don't want you to talk about your...
we go
I want you
again.
to talk about Max Hobart.
Okay.
We're going to come back
Stay
to
online,
Okay.
Max. I read that
Okay.
wrong.
Just a brief, not a, a little
Okay.
bit of who you are, so we
All right.
can make
Well,
this connection.
Before I became music director of the Wellesley Symphony, I played violin in the Boston Symphony and the Boston Pops for 27 years, as Leslie mentioned before. And when I retired from the BSO, it just happened that there was an opening for the music director of the Wellesley Symphony. So I applied for that, and by default, I won it.
Here
Here
you
you
are.
are. Here you are. yeah.
He was the only one who applied.
Would be.
So, but during that time, I was music director of the Boston Civic Symphony, and I just retired from that position for 38 years. These were all running sort of concurrently. You can't add 27 and 25 for the Wellesley Symphony and 38 and get my age because it's 128. So it was, but it's been a wonderful experience, and I hope that I get the chance to talk about my
Okay,
time
we'll
with
come back
Leslie
to you.
during this.
Okay, Laurie, a little bit about your
A little
life.
bit about me. Well, I was born in Vermont, so I am a native Vermonter, which is very important in New England. But I only lived there a short time, and then I moved to New Hampshire with my family, my mom and my dad and my brother, my younger brother. And I started taking piano when I was 6 years old.
6?
And yes, I had a
That's about 6 years ago. Huh?
Oh, yes,
exactly. I had a kindergarten music teacher who expressed to my parents that they thought I was musically that she thought I was musically inclined, and would they like to sign me up for piano lessons with her. She was a piano teacher, so that started my
Did she
musical.
make you do do, re, mi?
I'm sure she did. It's so long ago, I don't remember. So that's how I got my musical start, and I always loved to sing. And I went to college.
Where are you from?
I'm from Dunbarton, New Hampshire, actually.
What part?
Dunbarton.
Okay.
And when I moved there in the early 70s, there were about 900 people, so we knew everybody in town.
900 people.
And my father was the chief of police for a time, so I didn't get away with anything. But But I
So are
always
you still in
no. Now I live in Holliston, Massachusetts.
Holliston? Okay.
Yeah.
How did you get to Hollister?
It was a long road to Holliston. I went to undergrad school at the University of New Hampshire
Mm-hmm.
and got a degree in music education.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Northwestern University
Mm-hmm.
and got a master's in vocal performance. And I auditioned, I lived in Chicago for a while, and I was auditioning and singing a bit. And I auditioned for the San Francisco Opera as a chorister and got the job. So then I moved to San Francisco, and I was there for 7 years. And in the meantime, got married to my
You have a
husband,
family?
Brian. I didn't have a family yet.
Okay.
Moved back to New England because I'm a New England girl and I wanted to come back.
When did you get married?
I got married in 1993.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I will be married 25 years next
Oh,
March.
okay.
Congratulations.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we moved back to New England because we wanted to have a family,
Mhm.
and I have 2 beautiful children. My son Harrison is 14, and my daughter Amelia is 12. And we live in Holliston.
Yeah, they get to
And
the age where they're going to challenge you.
oh, they challenged me, yes.
Already.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I always tell my daughter she was perfect until she turned 3. And then her personality just changed on me.
Okay.
But
All right. Let's talk to Jill. Jill, tell us a little about yourself. Don't tell us what you know about Leslie. Tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, it's more interesting to talk about Leslie.
Well, we're going to get there.
I was born in
See, I'm trying to
Minnesota.
figure out who came to roast her. No, we're not going to roast you.
Well, we'll see. I was born in Minnesota, came east to go to college, got married, and stayed here. And I've lived in Wellesley for over 50 years. I have 2 daughters who went through the Wellesley school system, both of whom live in Seattle, and 3 grandchildren. Of interest, I think, is that I was the first woman to be admitted to the Babson MBA program
Oh.
in 1966.
Oh, Babson didn't let women into the MBA program?
Oh, of course not. When I applied, my legal name is Joanne, and they looked at it quickly and thought it was John, so I was invited in for an interview. And when I had the interview, they said, "What are you doing here? This is a boys' school." And I tried to talk my way into it, and they wanted to see my transcript, which I had with me. And they said, "I'm sorry, but looking at your transcript, there's no way we can't admit you. But really, you don't belong here." So I stayed and completed the MBA program. And then I became one of the first women in the professional area in the Boston Mutual Fund business.
Well, that's a very
And I've
piece
been
of history.
retired for about 20 years.
Okay, and Bill.
Well, I was born in Augusta, Maine, another little town, although it's the capital. It's smaller than when I lived there. It was about 17,000, and I think it's dipped down a little bit. It wasn't the capital of Maine. It was Portland. But there was a fire. The capital burnt to the ground in Portland, so they moved it temporarily to Augusta, intending to move it back to Portland, but they forgot about it. Evidently. But it was a very boring city. I'm sorry, Augustonians, but a very boring city to live in, and I moved to Boston as soon as I could get away to go to music school. Actually, both my brothers did the same thing. I don't know why we ended up in Boston, but that's where we went. I went to the Launchie School of Music.
Mm-hmm.
This was way back in the 60s, 66, I think, and got a degree there, then went to BU to do some graduate work. Studied with, I think, just about every piano teacher in Boston through my life, hopping from one to the other, which is something that pianists do. And then somehow I fell into accompanying. I was always a good sight reader, I think because my first piano teacher never made me memorize. She simply gave me piece after piece after piece. So by the time I was 13, I was playing through all the Beethoven sonatas, you know, and this enabled me to then play for singers because I could have a piece of vocal music put in front of me and I could read it. So that's how I got into the collaborative piano.
Okay, since you're talking, why don't you tell me how you came to be involved with Leslie Holmes?
Back.
Or what your relationship
It's
is
a
to
long,
her?
long story. Let's see. So I think I've known Leslie for, we're thinking 35 years, perhaps, something like that. And I think we go back to the point where I was a coach, a vocal coach, and I was working for various voice teachers around town. I think we may have crossed paths. Was it the McCloskey studio, perhaps, or
It wasn't.
Donna Roll, or something?
Donna Roll.
Donna Roll, perhaps. So it was a voice teacher. This is what pianists do in Boston too. In the beginning, to learn the ropes, you play in a voice studio and you learn the entire repertory because you're playing all the standard songs, opera arias, this and that. So I knew Leslie as a singer, and then a little later we began to work together. We did several recitals, I think a couple on WGBH, and then we got together and started to work on this art form called cabaret, which is something that Leslie has been very involved with. Cabaret is the more intimate art form that's done in a smaller setting than a concert hall, and started in, I think, in the 1880s in Paris, although we don't go back
I was
that
going to say
far.
that we.
We're not quite that, but it started with Eric Satie, those folks, and we've done a lot of that literature, all of the Poulenc, who dabbled in the cabaret style, and Satie, Schoenberg, also the Edith Piaf repertoire. Of course, she was the great cabaret singer of our time. And we have done a lot of the American songbook. I grew up playing from a young age, all the Irving Berlin, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Harold Arlen. I played all of that repertoire. So Leslie came in with this repertoire, and we've had a ball going through all of this incredible, rich repertoire of songs. So it's a treasured part of my musical life to have played for Leslie. It's been a great time, and I hope we'll go on for many years.
Me too.
Another 100 at least.
Yeah, at least.
Well, at least a little few. But anyway, we're having fun doing all the songs. Harold Arlen, especially, whom is very neglected in this country.
You've done a lot of opera too, and
Right.
recital.
We've done a lot of opera as well, but I mean, everyone knows Harold Arlen as the writer of Somewhere Over the Rainbow and The
What's
Wizard
your
of
favorite
Oz.
opera?
But he wrote a huge number of wonderful songs. So,
What's your favorite opera?
I think Madame Butterfly.
yes. And I saw Leslie sing.
I had a friend who sang with the Metropolitan, George Shirley.
Oh yeah,
George.
he lived in Montclair,
That
Oh,
was
he
New
did?
Jersey, which is
Wonderful.
where
we came out of
my
Detroit
parents
together.
moved.
Wonderful
He
singer.
went to the Metropolitan, I came to Wellesley.
Yeah.
Joe, you can now tell me about your,
The relationship I have with Leslie is very different from the rest of you. I really don't know anything about music. She is a wonderful musician. I was a financial analyst. You'd wonder how we would be friends, but we have been. And looking back, we've had wonderful times together. We both, we started out our friendship on the tennis court, and it blossomed. We started playing tennis when our children were really small, and we were in a group of women who would bring their playpens and set them up outside the tennis court, and we would be there by 9 every morning and pretty much play for the whole morning. In the winter, Leslie and I played squash, and both of these were almost daily.
Is she a good tennis player?
She's better than I am. But I have trouble remembering the score, so I don't feel so bad. I have a picture of the two of us here having a beer at the Marcus Club after our evening tennis game. And I have another picture here of a party, and this is my 40th birthday party, and it's kind of a cheesecake picture of the two of us showing off our legs. Speaking of parties, Leslie and Lou always had a Christmas party, and it was the party that everybody looked forward to. She would invite 60 or 70 of their closest friends, and Leslie would play the piano all evening, and she had songbooks for us, and we all sang, and just had a wonderful time. And that made me remember a special Christmas, which was held at my house. And at that time, Lou was driving probably a 15-year-old MG to commute in. So Leslie bought him this fabulous bright red Saab, and she backed it into my garage and hung a big wreath with a red bow on the front. Well, we all opened our presents, and Lou opened his last, which was a card with a poem written by the poetess there, and sending him to different places in the house to find his gift. Well, they ended up in the garage, and we had Lou open the garage door, and here is this magnificent car. Well, Lou was speechless, and we were teary. A Saab. Brand new red Saab. I mean, this was a serious gift. And Robbie, the youngest son, who's always kind of been my favorite, he's really cute. Anyway, he said, "Whoa, Dad, this could be the last car you ever have in your life."
Thanks, Robbie.
Another thing that hasn't really come up about Leslie that is so important is that she is so brave. She's very hardworking, as you all know. She's doing all sorts of things, but she's had some terrible medical issues. And she'll tell you how she has a Christmas tree all up her spine. She had just an incredible back operation and was in a hospital bed in her living room for months. And my memory is I'd like to go over and sit with her, but if you're sitting for a long time with somebody, you know, it's a little, you don't quite know what to do. And we remembered that we both loved The Secret Garden when we were children. So we read The Secret Garden aloud. And it was just a really special time, I think, for both of us.
Okay.
That's it?
Oh,
All those
no,
years,
I
that's
can
all
go
you've got to
on.
say about it?
What?
Yeah, all those years, that's all you've got to say about it?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, but you must have some good stuff down in there in those years. Pushing Jill, we're pushing Jill.
Isn't that funny?
Champagne and peaches at 3 Mile.
Oh, that's right. Well, I had another picture here.
Okay.
Of
We'll let Laurie play in the game here now.
Okay.
All right. What's your relationship? Well, we know what your relationship is. But what is it you can tell us about that you know about?
Leslie. Well,
Leslie?
I met Leslie probably in 1999 at a NATS masterclass. NATS is the National Association of Teachers of Singing. And I think you were the governor or district governor at the time of NATS. And my voice teacher at the time had called and said, I have this singer, and could she sing on one of the master classes? So Leslie heard me, and that was kind of that. And months later, I get this phone call. I had just moved into our house in Holliston, and it's Leslie Holmes. And she introduced herself, and I said, oh, I remember meeting you. And she said, I thought of you because there's this audition coming up, and I thought that maybe you might be right for this audition. And I explained to Leslie, I said, I just moved into our house. I haven't been practicing, and I don't think it's a good idea that somebody hear me right now because I'm not quite there, but I will be eventually. And I said, while I have you on the phone, could you tell me, because my voice teacher had moved, could you give me the name of a good voice teacher? And Leslie said, well, I'm good.
Yeah, me.
And I said, great. And I said, when I get settled in my house, then I'm going to give you a call. And I'm going to come and take lessons. She said, oh, that would be wonderful. And it's okay if, come and try it. If it doesn't work, that's okay too. So in September of 2000, I started taking voice lessons with Leslie. And I've been with her ever since.
Wow.
And we work a lot on French art songs. We both love French art songs. And she does not let me get away with anything in my French pronunciation. Sometimes my English pronunciation as well. And so I go to see Leslie every 2 weeks. And I say, I'm going to my therapy, because if I didn't take voice lessons, I would be in therapy. And it's the best therapy, and we have a great time. And she puts
Every
up
2
with
weeks now, huh?
every 2 weeks, and she puts up with my not practicing and when I have those weeks, and listens to me.
Are you back practicing?
I do practice, yes.
Yes.
This summer,
You're
not
too
so
busy
much.
with the little kids, right?
Well, I'm busy, and I also teach music,
Oh, okay.
kindergarten through 5th grade, in the Holliston Public Schools.
Oh,
So
okay. You didn't
so,
tell that when you were talking
yeah,
about
I
yourself.
know. I didn't get to that
No,
part.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you missed some of the good stuff.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
How long you been teaching?
I'm starting my 5th year in Holliston.
Okay,
Yeah. So.
all right. And
Yeah.
so what else did you have, how else do you relate to Leslie?
Well, we like to go to shows together. We've done that recently. We just saw The Elixir of Love together, which was really wonderful, with one of Leslie's former students, who was phenomenal, Joanna. I've never seen Manjana.
Other than teaching, have you done any performing?
I have. I did spend 7 years with the San Francisco Opera Chorus. I mentioned before that I had lived in San Francisco. And I've also soloed with the Wellesley Symphony. And my daughter's actually soloed with the Wellesley Symphony and the Boston Civic. She did a couple of holiday pops concerts with Max.
Okay.
Yeah. And now I sing in a choir at my church and solo there.
Well, you contralto or alto?
I am a soprano.
Oh, let me hear a little soprano noise.
Hey,
And a couple of notes.
Oh my goodness.
No, baby. I've been wanting to do that always.
You're putting me on the spot.
How about you, Max?
My relationship with Leslie, we're finally going to do that. As I was saying before, I started conducting the Wellesley Symphony. This is my 25th season with them. And shortly after I joined the Wellesley, there came an opening for the board president. George Brown, the president at the time, was retiring. And Leslie's name came up. And Leslie left the room during a meeting. You should never do that.
Now you tell me.
She came back and she was president. Was that quick. And well, people always say, if you want something done, ask somebody who's busy, and they'll get it done. And we were right. She has been the most generous and giving person that I've ever encountered. She's just terrific. I was wondering if this get-together today might be a roast, but if it had been a roast, nobody would have anything to talk about. We wouldn't be able to say a word, because she is just the most giving and wonderful person. I've thought about this get-together tonight, and I feel that Leslie wears many hats. She's involved in so many things, and of the half dozen hats that I know about, I can talk a little bit about. And she probably has a half dozen more that she's kept secret from me all this time that I don't know about. I know she hosts amazing things and does her. I've seen her cabaret shows before, and they're just wonderful. She does two things for the Wellesley Symphony that I think are quite wonderful. Besides, I think the hardest part is just being president of a board and planning the agenda and solving.
Size of your board?
Huh?
Size of your board?
Let's see, it's 20 or so.
Not quite that many. I
Okay.
think they're about
15 to 20, something like
Right.
that. It changes as people come and go.
Fluctuating board. Fluctuating board.
Yes.
All
We're
right.
trying to build it. So anybody listening, if you want to join the board of Wellesley Symphony.
I'd be careful.
Well, she does so many things well. And of course, every year we have her sing at one concert. Two of her favorite things that I think benefit the Wellesley Symphony the most. One is at every subscription concert, we have Leslie do a pre-concert talk. And it's not really a lecture. I think we avoided using the word lecture because people would think, well, this is going to be boring. She gives a talk in which she discusses the composer and the pieces that are being played.
Now, is that the Sunday afternoon?
This is a
discussion?
Sunday afternoon,
All right.
about an hour before the performance starts, the musical
Okay.
performance. She does this talk.
Uh-huh.
And they are just wonderful. They are so informative, so interesting, and many of the orchestra come out to listen. Instead of warming up and practicing the music, they'll come out and listen to her. She really enjoys these, and she's said many times publicly that her research is one of the most fun things that she does. She gets a lot out of it. She's really a lifetime learner. She loves to learn, and the research pays off because she gives a really interesting talk. One of the other things that she does very, very well is a lot of music that orchestras do have a narration. They tell a story. You did a narration once with us. Did you do
a Lincoln Portrait.
Lincoln Portrait? Yeah.
Mhm.
We're doing that again this next year.
Let's
this
talk about
next
that
season.
because, I'm still nervous.
I know, that brings out, yeah. We got somebody, as you probably know, we got former Governor Deval Patrick to do it this time.
He did it?
Yes.
Okay.
He's going
He
to
hasn't
do
done
it.
it yet, he's going to in February.
Yeah, I'm grateful to Leslie because, it takes a lot to stand up in a crowd of people and do a performance. And how did you decide that I should do that performance?
Because you have such a wonderful speaking voice.
How about my brain and my...
Well, I worked hard with you.
You're right. Those are hard rehearsals.
I wasn't worried about your brain.
No, hardly.
That was a very marvelous experience for me.
It was you
And
did a
very
wonderful
frightening. When I
job.
frightened Max a little bit, I forgot to tell Max that I have dry eyes, and I weep. And all I had to do was start weeping, trying to read the score. But I didn't tell him after I finished.
And he
So
wondered
it
what was
wasn't the
wrong with
sad
you.
story of Abraham Lincoln. It was your dry eye.
That's the dry eyes that was making.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
funny.
one of Leslie's really big talents is her ability to do a narration, and because she's a musician, you can depend on her. Her timing is perfect. When many narrations, you're supposed to say a word right when the music is happening, changing. She has the ability to do that. And she told me something after a couple of performances. She was always terrific at Peter and the Wolf, and a piece we're doing this season, The Little Train That Could, or The Little Engine That Could. What was the other piece? The Snowman. And you all know that story of the snowman who melts down and stuff. Well, she admitted to me, when you kind of gave it away, that the timing of the piece is very important, but the timing for a really sensitive, emotional word or thought of the story, the plot, she would get a tear in her eye as she was about to say something in the storyline that was emotional. And she admitted that afterwards, but I saw it and I was afraid to keep going. But so if anybody ever needs, if you can't, a narrator, if you can't get Richard, then please get Leslie.
You'll be hosting these shows next.
Yeah. She's
Okay.
invaluable to
All right.
the Wellesley Symphony.
All right. Well, I lived well thereafter. Forever.
Yeah.
Barbara,
Well-
you are the longest, well, you've known Leslie the longest of any of us,
Yeah, I guess I have.
and you probably know everything from A to Z.
I know a lot.
Oh. Well, let's do that.
Okay, let's do
All
that.
right.
Well, as I said before.
Should I leave the room?
No, you
Ask Barbara. She didn't want your husband to come.
Yes, I knew, for those of you who don't remember, I met Leslie in kindergarten. And then my parents moved up very close to where she lived, so we spent a lot of time together and played all these games and what have you on the streets, because it was a small town and we could do that. But as I mentioned, Leslie's always been involved in music. And quite frankly, I was a little bit jealous because I don't have a musical bone in my body. I'm like, you are.
But you're in these musicals.
I'm in these musicals. Surprise, surprise. Well, I can fake it. That's the big deal. As long as as long as I don't just sing a solo. But growing up, we had a lot of fun. As I mentioned, Leslie dated my brother. She dated. It was very interesting because it's a small town, right, relatively so. And my brother's group dated boys and girls in my class and Leslie's class, and vice versa, obviously. So it was great for my parents because my brother and I were always at the same parties. And we had a lot of parties in that town. Oh, brother. But I was particularly jealous of Leslie when she became a cheerleader. I mean, as I say, I don't have a musical bone in my body, so I couldn't do cheerleading, and she made the team and I didn't. So, but we played a lot of sports together. As I said, we had this team called the Up and Adams. Basketball, baseball, volleyball. We played volleyball, didn't we?
Oh, that may be it.
Yeah, I don't think it was hockey. Maybe you played hockey, but I didn't.
Yeah, I did.
And,
Since you played field hockey.
but I guess the
I
thing,
did play field.
Oh.
I told the story before about my brother two-timing her, so I won't tell that again. But I guess the other thing I remember particularly, we had a lot of slumber parties at each other's houses. And one time we were at Leslie's house. And I don't even remember how old we were. Were we in junior high or high school? I don't know. But we were jumping up and down on the bed and we broke it. And Leslie's father come up the stairs. Leslie was I thought she was shaking. He was not happy. So when he left, we started jumping on the bed again, even though it was broken. I remember that, but he was so mad at us. But I don't know what else we had. We did so many things in school, and then of course Leslie went to Wellesley. I went to school in northern New Jersey, and I guess I was about the first one that got married. And we were all in each other's weddings. I was in yours and Lou's wedding. You were in my wedding. If I recall correctly, you were going to sing at my wedding, and then somebody couldn't be in the wedding, so you got bounced to singer, and you were in the wedding. So, but she knew my husband very well also, who was also a musician actually. He played by ear, never had a lesson in his life, and you could sing him a tune, and he just sit down and play it.
It's a great
You know,
gift.
that's disgusting.
That's something that some people have that.
It was
Such a gift.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
But boy, I don't know. We did a lot of things. I can still picture walking up and down Prospect Street, where you lived and I lived. And it's interesting because I've been back a couple of times recently, and it seemed when we lived there that it was pretty far from one house to another. You go back now and it's like it's next door. Why? There's some perspective there that whatever.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun in that town, and we went. You could go out in the morning, and your parents, you could leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they just said, "Get back before the streetlights go on." Today you can't do that, and that's so sad because it was a wonderful town to grow up in.
Yeah.
And I remember her parents very well. Leslie gets her poetry from her mom, and we spent a lot of time at each other's houses. My house, my parents' house, I should say, had a finished basement, which a lot of people didn't have at that time, and no family room or anything. So all the parties were usually at our house. So we had, and as I said, we dated. We sort of switched boys, kind of around. We were dating one, and then the other one was dating him, and oh my God, we really did have a lot of fun, and it was just a great upbringing. I just wish some of these kids today could have the same thing. It was great.
Evidently, you've kept in touch all these years. Is that right?
Well, we have, kind of. I think when we went off to college, you kind of lose it a little bit, and then, I remember when Leslie had her 3 boys, the story I was going to tell. We were living in Ohio, and we came back for a visit with my parents, who were still living in a town, Glen Ridge, outside of. And I called Leslie, and she said, I'll come down and I'll bring the 3 boys. Now, the 3 boys were probably like this. And I said to my mother, I think you better put everything that's breakable away.
Good advice.
Yeah, right,
Very good
exactly.
But every time I would go to visit my parents, I would go over, because you were then living in the next town.
Right.
And have dinner with you and Jim.
Right.
For years.
We did. And then we moved, we lived in Nutley still for a while in an apartment. Then when our daughter was 1.5 years, we bought a house in Wayne Township.
Right.
So, yeah, all right. And then we moved to Ohio, so it kind of got, and then when we moved back here, when we moved to Massachusetts in '74, and I realized you were in Wellesley, and I used to bring my son up to Wellesley Golf Club to take golf lessons. And so we met, and we've been going back and forth ever since. We always meet at paparazzi's.
How about the rest of you? You still in touch? You of course you are, because you were. You're still.
I see Leslie
Every Friday.
every week because we
Every
work.
Friday.
Every Friday we're
Every
working.
Friday. Okay. Will you take me? How much you charge?
Sure, yes.
How much you charge?
But you can do some duets. We can try and do some
He
duets.
wouldn't take me, I can guarantee you that.
Everyone who can speak can sing. That's my
Oh, you
philosophy.
sound like Low Steel.
Yeah. You can sing if
Actually,
you can
that's
speak.
not always.
That's not always true. But generally, if somebody can speak, because I've had
Over
people.
all these years, I've only had 2 or 3 people who never could match pitches, who couldn't. They
Right.
did, I mean,
There's usually
they
a
couldn't
genetic
sing.
thing with the ear to the brain, because usually anyone can match a pitch. But I know my mother was what they call tone deaf. She couldn't match pitches. But I think sometimes that's something you learn early on. If a teacher says, don't sing your off pitch,
Yeah.
and you develop a complex. about
That's
it.
so awful.
It is
It's awful to tell somebody that. You should never discourage anyone.
My mother could hardly sing on pitch, but she was the church organist. She was a wonderful pianist.
You said, yeah.
right.
So
So,
Well, it was interesting when we first moved to Linden Ponds, the retirement community in Hingham. One night we sat down with this woman and I said, well, where are you from? Because everybody's from someplace. She said, Wellesley. I said, oh, I only know one person in Wellesley. You probably wouldn't know them. I said, Leslie Holmes. Leslie Holmes? She said, she lives right down the street from me and she used to give my son Matt piano lessons. So I went,
voice lessons.
Voice lessons, I wasn't sure. I
small
said, now
world.
it's a small world.
Small world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Joe? You stay in touch?
Yes.
Daily, daily.
Daily.
These are all people with whom I am involved totally. Now.
Socially. Your drinking buddies.
You're right.
I'll admit it. You know,
Sorry, that would
we
make me
haven't
sad.
talked about Leslie's family.
All right.
And Leslie is a wonderful mother. And I can tell that because her children are all so devoted to her. The family goes on vacation together, and by that I mean the grandparents, the parents, and the grandchildren. Every year, I remember a highlight, I think, of that family was a trip to Botswana. Just had a wonderful time. But if there's an issue with one of the children, they're talking to Leslie, they're seeing the other children. It's a family that is so close and there's such love there. It's really inspiring
We're very
to see.
lucky.
There's only one problem that I remember, and that is
Uh-oh.
that neither of us, this was a long tradition for a while, neither of us used to get flowers on Mother's Day.
That's right.
And we felt bad about it. So we decided that from then on, and we did it for God knows how many years, we would go to Valenti's, the two of us, and buy each other a hanging plant. And we did that forever, yes.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, you were talking, Max, about Leslie can always find time to do whatever, regardless of how busy she is. My husband just passed away, and Leslie had kind of started this illness walk with him because she was down in Florida when it happened. Anyway, she said, I'll be there. And then she wrote and she said, well, no, maybe I won't be there. Because first of all, she was going to Chicago for Sam's 80th birthday.
My ex-brother-in-law.
Ex-brother-in-law, Catherine's husband. And, but then a very good friend of hers passed away. I don't know her.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. And she said, I am so sorry. She said, I just cannot come because I'm singing at her funeral. And I said, don't worry about it. Whatever. Well, I'm standing in the receiving line at the funeral home, and I look up, and there's Leslie. How did you get here?
Uber.
Now, number one, I knew that Lou was in Chicago. Now, she can't, I thought to myself, she better not try to drive down here. And no, she Ubered it. And it was so great to see her. And of course, Ann was there, the woman I was just talking about who knew Leslie, and so she was there. And so it was just, I was blown away with the fact that she would do that for me and for Jim. And come down, and then she got to meet all my grandchildren.
I couldn't not do it.
Oh, I know. And so then we had her back to my daughter's house. And of course, she came down not knowing how she was going to get home. She said,
Uber.
I'll figure it out later. So we got her over to my daughter's house afterwards, and Pam
They
called.
sent me
I was
home in a
I was in
limo.
a fog.
And the limo,
So-
great.
My daughter handed it. Yeah, so we sent her home in a limo. So that was fun. But she fell down the stairs while she was there.
And we haven't talked about her number one van.
Who's her number one fan?
Lou,
Oh, well, of course.
her husband,
Yeah, Lou, we forgot about you.
who is totally supportive of all these hundreds of things she's doing. And she is the same with his amazing career. It's just wonderful to see the marriage.
Well,
And
fortunately,
how-
we're both so busy.
I know you
that
don't
it's
have
good.
time to fight.
Because if one was sitting at home, waiting for the other person to show up,
Right.
whereas,
Now you're both not at home.
Right.
well, but then we really connect.
Well, of course.
Well, and, you have,
So-
and you have interesting things to talk about with each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. That's right.
Okay, I'm going to
Important.
go ahead.
Well, one,
I'm going to try something. Now we have joining us a person who has lived through this marvelous experience.
Survived.
I think marvelous experience is the right word. I don't know. I'll ask him. Lou? Lou Holmes, Dr. Lou Holmes, has been sitting patiently in the wing, waiting to see what was going to be said that he could object to. Now he's down front. He can tell us what. Tell us a little bit about how your life has been with Leslie.
Well, we've gone through what a lot of people go through. We started off with, as she said, no money, and had children when we were young. So we had a busy household with no money, and stresses in my world. I worked in research primarily and had to raise my salary. That was stressful for me, and it's rubbed off on everybody else. Leslie was trying to preserve her chances to sing, and 3 little children, that's not easy. So how do you work out time for her to sing and work on her singing and her teachers and so forth? So a lot of people go through this. You know, you're sort of struggling to get everything to work, and 57 years later, here we are. Yeah.
Here we are,
Yeah. So
just like that.
It
Here we
all
are.
smoothed
Just jump
out.
right over the hook. Tell us a little bit of what you do, Lou.
Well, I came to Mass General as an intern in 1963. Got interested in birth defects as a problem. I just stumbled into some opportunities, and that became a focus of my research. So I've just
You're still doing that.
I'm finishing up long-term projects related to birth defects in children. And one of the secrets to this whole thing is that I've been supportive of what Leslie's done, and she's been supportive of what I've done. Because you can't do research without somebody supporting you.
Of course.
You know, she has to be understanding, and a lot of Friday nights working late to catch up on stuff you couldn't do during the week. And, you know.
You use that old excuse too, huh?
But that was the key part of it, you know, for us
Oh, yeah?
to build the things. I was building what I was doing, she was building what she's doing, and staying in one place, I think, was an important decision for us. It benefited her in terms of getting to know all the nice people here, and the singing opportunities, and the music score in town, and for me, staying in one place made a big difference. So it's been helpful to stay in one place. And having a house that we could live in. She was the smart one, because we were looking at houses, and most of them that we looked at, and I'm sure this happened to Jill too, maybe Laurie, it's typical to get a 3-bedroom house, and then you outgrow it. So, you know, you get in one house for a few years, and then you have to move. Well, Leslie was smart enough to say we need to get a 4-bedroom house. So our first and only house, $35,000.
What year?
1968. So,
$35,000.
doesn't that sound good? Wouldn't you love to be worrying about a mortgage for $35,000? Yes. Well, anyway, so that helped. But
Yeah.
of course, my salary my first year was $13,500 for the year. So, it balances out the $35,000.
But it went up.
True, but
Your-
slowly.
When he was hired, your salary was.
Well, no, you're thinking about an internship. I was hired as an intern this is at Mass General, for $750 for the year, $750.
Oh,
Wow.
And then they found out that we had a son who'd just been born in my 4th year of medical school. And so they went to $850. That should cover it. She said, tell this little boy that, you know, you only got $100, is what, you know, but anyway. So, yeah. But anyway, it's all relative, so.
A couple of highlights in your life.
For my own personal research, I mean, that kind of thing?
In the life of the two of you.
Oh, I think one of the things that Leslie found hard was I was off working and I'd come home and I would see things that I thought ought to be handled this way or that way, and she'd been there all day dealing with the 3 sons. And I think the thing I learned from her was you got to respect the fact that somebody's been there all day long putting out fires, dealing with stuff, and there's certain things you decide aren't worth it. And I come in, you know, at the end of the day and, you know, don't agree. Well, that was not smart. And you learn that. And, you know, you go through raising 3 sons and the issues that come up, and that was hard because of this crazy way that she was there all the time and I was only in and out. But I think that was one major passage for us.
No.
And then getting to where she was getting to do what she wanted to do and I was getting to do what I wanted to do. Those were key things to be able, in the next phase, to be able to be more creative and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And then as you get older, you begin to see the benefit of the hard work that's been done.
Right.
And that's satisfying.
Isn't that tragic that we have to get old and realize
That's true.
older?
It's better than the alternative.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
I don't go there. So how about some highlights in your life?
Well, I picked a field to work in that's just exploded. You know, when we started, there hadn't been let's see, just a few years before I was an intern, a guy in France figured out what Down syndrome is due to, an extra chromosome. And then while I was in medical school, a couple of more things, fundamental findings occurred. Now, because of when I went to medical school, there wasn't a genetics course. So one of the things for me that was amazing was to get interested in birth defects and to have the field of genetics suddenly becoming a career option. And so I was right place, right time for that to happen. But now the field has gotten so much more sophisticated, and it's just amazing to see the incredible progress it's made. I mean, I've had my moments of doing things that were original, and that's always gratifying. But the explosion in the fundamental knowledge is much.
So there are some breakthroughs.
Huge breakthroughs.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk now about sequencing someone's genes, you know. Where they started the Human Genome Project, it took several years to go through the entire human genome and sort that out. Now you can have a baby in the intensive care unit who's got a lot of birth defects that don't make any sense to anybody. They can take DNA and do sequencing of that baby's DNA in a matter of a short period of time and give the parents an answer. That's what your child's problem is. And that's something that, you know, 50 years ago was totally unimaginable. So.
Tell me about one of the worst moments you've had.
Money. When
I thought you were
when-
unique in that respect.
Well, yeah, right. So when you do what I've done, you have to raise your own salary. And, you know, applying to foundations,
In your
National
project?
Institutes of Health. You know, you've come up with a project that you think is worth funding,
Mhm.
and you submit it to the March of Dimes or the Easter Seals or the National Institutes of Health or National Science Foundation, whatever.
Mhm.
And whether or not you're going to get your salary depends on whether any of those are successful. And you may submit 10 and get 1. So that means you got to spend a lot of time developing proposals. And then you got to do progress reports and so forth. So you got to get something, you have to show something for what you've been doing. And we've had a couple of times when the funding was just bottomed out.
Oh.
And I had to spend a couple of years in the early 80s working as a pediatrician at the Spalding Rehab Hospital because I didn't have enough grant support. And that was a way for me to work Saturdays and Sundays and that sort of thing. So during the week we could be writing grant proposals and doing all that kind of stuff. So a couple of times we've really hit bottom. And that's when it really sort of challenges your commitment. You know, you've decided you want to do this. And unfortunately, everybody who does research usually has these episodes. And sometimes it leads people to sort of change their career direction, you know, because...
I know it never happened, but what, tell me a little bad moment you've had in your marriage now.
You mean mad fun?
He's not going to talk about that, or whatever.
I tell you, one success that I think we ought to brag about is we have a trophy at home of a tennis tournament.
Okay.
She and I played in a tennis tournament.
Okay.
Several tennis.
And that is real couples therapy. If you can succeed in going to play tennis with a smile on your face and go home with a smile on your face together, that's a real success.
Even when during the match you double fault and your wife looks at you as if she's going to kill you.
So we took the trophy. This is a Class C trophy, so it was not exactly saying we were terrific tennis players, but we were, you know, at a level with other people. And we got an extra engraving on the side of it that said couples therapy.
You got it.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, this has been great. I'm sorry we didn't have enough space so we could bring you in to begin with, but it's a matter of how the cameras can find you.
Well, it's important
We
for
wanted
Barbara
to
to be
find
here.
all of you, not just half of you. She has to find the other half of you all the time, so I don't want the cameras to have to go through that. You've been good. This has been a good conversation. And thank you for all coming and
Thank you for
joining.
putting it all together.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for inviting us.
It was a great idea to bring out Lou.
Yes.
I really appreciate all of you coming.
Yes.
I wanted to, can I say one more thing?
You can say whatever you wish.
Thank you. Max was sort of going through this, the things that Leslie does so well, and one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is that she is a master vocal technician, and she has an incredible ear, and she's just one of these just very few voice teachers that really gets it, is always learning, always trying to be better, and hears things that other people don't hear and knows how to help a singer through it and fix it. And that is an amazing, amazing gift that she has given me. So there are very few people like that.
Wow.
Anyone else have? You have a last word? You have a last word, Bill?
I just want to say how much I've enjoyed over the years making music, and it's one of the greatest joys in my life is to play for a wonderful singer, and it's been a great music making relationship. So
If you
Thank
ever
you.
come to our house, one of the best photographs in our house is Leslie singing, and Bill's in the background, and he has facial expressions that are typical of when he's playing. He has certain. It's just wonderful. Captures both of them perfectly. Yeah.
Jill, do you have some last words to say?
I just would say that Leslie is a great joy in my life. She's a person I love, I could trust. She and I have been through some really wonderful times and some really hard times together. And to have a friend for 50 years, it's an indescribable gift. And the other thing I'd like to mention is Lou. Maybe you could comment on the chair that you're.
Oh. Well, we're trying to create a professorship at Mass General that would support the work I did, where you would provide, it would essentially provide salary support for someone who took my place, so that that poor soul wouldn't have to spend so much time writing grant proposals or doing patient care to raise a salary, and it would provide the solidity of the salary support that somebody needs to build a career and do some really good research. So we're trying to do that. So if you got your checkbook with you,
Always.
I know where it can
I
go.
don't have a pen.
We go.
I want to know if you're still driving the red Saab.
That Saab gets to about 110, 112,000, and
What was the question? Because we couldn't.
what's that?
What was the question?
Oh, the question was what happened to the red Saab. I had a wonderful relationship with it. When it finally ended, I have a picture that was taken of me hugging the car as it went away. But it got to about 112,000 miles. And
That was it.
that was about it.
I never got to tell how I got the money
Yeah, right.
Oh,
You
right.
started to
to
tell us.
buy that Saab. I had been riding my bicycle to play tennis.
Wait a minute. I was working weekends to make money because I didn't have grant support, and you were riding your bicycle to play tennis because I wasn't there to drive us there.
So you had one car.
Right.
Yeah.
So a car came out of a street in Wellesley called Willow Road and hit me
Mm-hmm.
and knocked me into
How
the
long ago
middle
was
of
this?
Weston Road. And so a friend of ours was a lawyer, and he went to so-called bat for me, and I got all the insurance this guy had. He started yelling at me in Hungarian or something, and I'm lying in the street. But he had $20,000 of insurance, and that was quite a while ago, and so I could buy
By-
a car
The
with
red
that
Saab.
money.
Well, Jill will remember
What a painful way to get the money.
when
Painful way to get the.
when they showed me the car and said, "This is your car," my response that Jill and Leslie, I'm sure, still remember, says, "We can't afford this."
Oh, yes, I'd forgotten that. That you
I mean,
refused the
no.
gift.
We just that was beyond our budget.
And I kept saying, but I bought it for you.
It's
no, we
paid for.
can't afford it."
Yes, no, that was the amazing part.
That is. What a gift. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. I think we're going to wrap up here now.
No, this has been
No.
it's wonderful.
It's been a good show. And I want to thank those who watch my show. Keep watching. Always something interesting to look at, to hear. I am Richard S. McGee, and you're watching The Learning Tree. Good night.